I hope you guys are using these to stay caught up. Yeah. All right, so we're doing the bell work. I started the recording late. This was the bell work problem. We've circled the numbers. We put boxes. Oh, I forgot to put a box around the word total. We put a box around. I'm going to box this whole piece here. Put a box around that because that was important. We said almost always you're going to have some kind of a total in a word problem. When you have the total, it's going to wind up being all by itself on one side. Typically, now we just have to figure out on the left side of the equation what makes up that $5, what makes up that total that we spent. And then we said the variable is probably 99% of the time going to come straight from either the question or what it tells us we need to solve for, what it tells us to do. Like it could have said, find how much one airhead costs instead of asking us a question about how much it costs. But the variable is the unknown. So whatever we're trying to solve for is the variable. All right, so the next step is huge for you guys that struggle with this. I believe I gave a C for this, especially if you did it a good job of it. Ella, head up, girl. Because this is one that can get you a C if you can just do this part right here. I consider it, no, other teachers may not consider this a C, but I think it is. If I just say, well, I know I bought airheads, right? And I spent, I'm going to put a dollar sign there because I spent money on the airheads. I'm not even talking about how many airheads yet. We'll get to that next. And then I spent money. I actually think I spelled icy wrong. That's an equation. Now the variable is not a letter, and technically we have two variables in there, which we really would want just one variable, and we'll get to that point. But as of right now, that's probably not a C, but I could maybe give that a passing grade. And you haven't really done anything but told me which one, and then told me how much you actually spent. Now, the next step to get you to the CBA range, assuming I give that I probably wouldn't give that a passing grade in a month. But starting out, if you can do that right now at this stage, I could probably give that a passing grade right now. Here's what you need to be able to do. Why did it not? Oh, all right. Yeah. Understand why I didn't keep the blank spaces. If you can just now convert those words though into numbers and the variable's got to be somewhere, that gets you 100%. So start with that. Just say, okay, I'm typically going to have a total, and I'll tell you almost every problem. I mean, probably every problem I do is going to have a total. So if you can just say, okay, this total number, what makes up that total number in words? Now take the words and try to say, okay, how do I change those words into the actual equation? So what makes up the amount we spent on, we'll start with the icy first. What makes up the amount we spent on the icy? Like, where do we get that piece? Sophia. What makes up the cost of the icy? Do I get that from? Or just tell me what it is. It's $2. How hard is that? It tells you the icy is $2. So these word problems are not that bad. I think the ones that we did before are more difficult when it says a number is 3 times the sum of x plus 8. But typically, and I'm not saying that they're not going to give you harder ones than this, but they'll give you some that are at this level that are not that bad at all. And it's even multiple choice. You get to pick which equation is right. So if it tells me the icy was $2, then I just replaced the icy like word with $2. I'm still going to do dollar signs. Again, you don't have to. Man, I haven't really done anything that's rocket science yet. Did it in words first. Now I'm converting it into numbers. That was one number. It was given. There was nothing to do with an unknown. I know that icy was $2. I'm almost done. That's definitely a C if you get to that point, even if you can't figure out exactly how to do the airheads part. Now it's a little tricky. What do we do to replace the airheads? Kind of on the way. I guess I'll go with Jocelyn Hart. Well, actually, you're both Jocelyn Hart. That didn't help me. I guess I'll have to go with Jocelyn in the back. What's that? Oh, is it? Oh, or two. Yeah, I thought it was true. So is it hyphenated? Is that what it is? Remember something about that. All right, so no. Why? So even if you can't get this perfectly, look at what we associated with airheads, or look at what they associate with airheads. They said literally right next to each other. 3 is right next to airheads. It'll typically be that there's a number next to that word. If it doesn't, like if it's not making sense on how to create it, go with that. The number that's typically right in front of it, possibly behind it, but it's going to be pretty close to it. I'm not going to talk about airheads and then have the number of airheads in some other area, unless I say airheads again in the other area. I've got to tell you how many of them there are. I've got to use that word airhead. I mean, there's no other option. So I know 3 is going to be in there. So I can say, okay, if I'm replacing the airheads money part, I got 3 of them. Now, what's the only thing that we're missing then? Status quo. So I'm going to have Jocelyn in the front explain what the rest of it was. So there's a 3 because we have 3 airheads, but we need the money spent on the airheads. So how do we get the money spent? We're buying 3 of them, but how do we get the money spent on airheads? Because I don't want to know how many. I don't want to just know how many. I want to know how much money I spent. What do I need to do? Buy 3 of them. I do what? Not plus 3. There is a way you can do it using addition. I'm going to show that also. But what do I need to know? If I buy 3 of them, what do I need to know to get how much I spent on them? No, we're not solving yet. So again, don't again, if I said it before, don't ever try to solve. Don't ever try to solve while you're creating math. So you're solving, so that'll be what we'll do in a minute. So that's you're getting the solving part. So it's actually, you have to be careful when you can solve something because you're going to want to use that in the equation. So you're good for the next part. We're going to get the solving part. But how do I create the equation? So don't try to solve yet. What is it you just said in that, basically what we solve for, that we need to know? If I want to know how much I spent on airheads, like I want to, and I know it's $3 because I know 2 from the 5 is 3. But if I were just going to calculate how much I spent on something, anything, if I spent money on movie tickets and I bought 5 movie tickets, what would I do? What would I need to know in order to know how much I spent on 5 movie tickets? Well, but I don't know what to divide by yet. What am I missing, David? Do you know where I'm going? No, I'm not asking you for the math operation. I'm not asking for a math operation yet. You guys are in the mode of solving. There's something I need to know in order to find out the total cost. And I'll come back if nobody can get it. Ella, what do I need to know? If I want to know how much I spent in total on 5 movie tickets, and I want to say, okay, this is how much the total is going to be. What do I need to know? I know I'm getting 5 of them, but what do I not know? But not give you a. Think about it. If you want to know how much you're going to, you want to know how much money you're going to need, right? Just to buy 5 tickets. What do you need to know? You need to know how much 1 ticket is. That's your variable, the unknown. We do not know, and we already said that. So I'm going to now give you a kind of a shortcut. Look at what's associated with airheads. Well, we know this number was associated with airheads, right? But what else was associated with airheads? Variables. Airheads is what the variable is about. Remember? So the variable is what we don't know, and that's what we need to know the total cost. So we would say 3x. That's where Jocelyn got the 3x plus 2. I'm sorry, 3a. I told you to use a, or I decided I was going to use a. So that's the equation. So I mean, again, in my opinion, I teach math. The only tricky part is figuring out what replaces, like how you use the variable in the equation. One number is just going to be given, at least in these type of equations. One number is just going to be a number. But actually two numbers, because the total is just going to be a number. You just have to figure out what is the variable, which is the unknown. Typically, it'll be a question. Sometimes they'll just tell you, let the variable A be the cost of an icy. But sometimes they'll just tell you what the variable is. You just then have to figure out how to use that variable and the other number in the problem, the word problem. But again, just look for the word airhead. Word airhead is there. Well, that has to do with the variable. The word airhead is here. Well, that has to do with the number 3. I mean, they'll tell you right in the problem. Wherever it says airhead, that's the information you're going to use. They can't do it any other way. I shouldn't say they can't, but normally they'll do it like that. So that's your equation. I will tell you one thing. I'm fine with you doing this, although you do need to know how. If we were thinking about how we really truly did this, we were buying airheads. A is how much one airhead costs, right? So we could say, well, A is one airhead. That's the cost of one. Oh, and I would say $3 there, I guess. So A is the cost of one airhead. How many did I buy? How many airheads did I buy? About 3, right? So I could just say, well, one airhead plus another airhead plus another airhead, and then plus the icy equals the total. That again, if you need to kind of think of it that way, if the 3 times the A isn't necessarily connecting for you, then you could write this as well. That's not an A on a quiz, because what would we do with the 3 A's normally? If we were solving, so Maddie wanted to solve, I'm sure other people were trying to solve it during the process. What would we do with those 3 A's if we were truly solving an equation? We would combine them, right? They're like terms. We said like terms have the same variable. Well, that's the same variable. We have 1A, 2A's, 3A's. So we combine those, and then we should still get that equation right there. So if you didn't start with that equation and just jump straight to it, and you need to do this step in between to make it make sense in your head, what's going on in the story, just know that why did I write X? Man, Jocelyn said X and not can't forget it. So an A on that is this. That's a B. This is at this stage, if you just write airheads plus icy, that's probably a passing grade of D. But down the road, I expect you to be able to at least change this into a 2 for a D down the road. If you can't get the variable part exactly correct, the 3A, I could still give you a passing grade if you just had the +2 = 5 part. So I don't really have any practice on that yet. I wanted to go over it. We'll do that next week. Let's go ahead. Before we start practicing equations, I'm going to actually, you know what? I want you guys to, get your equation sheet out. It's the one that says actually get both of them out. Get the one that says 2-step and multi-step. You have a quiz today on these. The multi-step is kind of a practice. I mean, if you get 100 on it, I might still count it. But mainly the 2-step is going to count if you do better on that. It's not going to be a separate grade, so it can't hurt you. But if you're doing a little better on 2-step equations, which a lot of you are now, I will replace your 2-step equation quiz with what you do today if you do better. So it's a free retake basically, without having to go through the whole process of retakes. So you may just want to practice the 2-step, knowing that that's the most important thing. If you feel like you have that down, you can practice the multi-step. While you are doing that and work together, I don't mind if you move around. So if you want to go back there, but you guys need to make sure you work. You have a quiz on it. You don't have either of those. All right, I think I do have. No, I have the multi-step. I may not have the 2-step. Yeah, well, here, I'll definitely give you this one. What you can try to do is wherever you see, well, do you remember what a like term is? Sure what they weren't. So like terms mean same variable. We have term or no variable at all, so like just two numbers. If they are on the same side, like these are on the same side of the equal sign, okay, I can just combine them. I can just take whatever the sign is in front of the number part of those terms, and I can just combine those numbers. So the first problem, what would you do? So we're gonna find it. Yeah. If you don't know, that's fine. I'm going to use it. Take a guess. Probably what your instinct is. So now I'm going to tell you this. Think of variable terms as physical things, like literally. Think of, I don't have enough. Well, I'll do a different example. I'll use x's. So I just, yeah. So the variable, we're gonna use the variable x and I'm creating a different problem. So let's turn it over real quick. I want you to put 2x plus 3x. And again, x is a variable, it's not multiplication. We only use a dot for multiplication. Which then you can compute, you have 2x and then the x that means time. Use a dot in between. I want 2x. Yeah, so 2x plus 3x. So you have 2x plus 3x. Here's how I want you to think of variables. The number in front of the variable, it just tells you how many variables. I'll be up there in a second. So, there are 2x's. That's 2x right there. You can literally have 2x's. What's it say you're doing about? So I'm adding, right? That's what plus means. 3 more x's, right? All right, so I'm going to add to the 2x's you have. I'm going to add 3 more x's. How many x's do you have? So that's the answer. Like you just think of them as physical things. You have 2 of them, I'll give you 3 more. Now, if we were now, let's say you had, so now like 5x subtract. Right, x, 5x subtract x. Five x subtract. Odd is multiplication. Yeah, that's it. 5x subtract x. So now that means that I'm taking away from you. So you have the 5x's. So this 5x's is that. Okay? Subtracting means I'm taking away. So I'm going to take away 1x because it doesn't have a 1 in front of it, but it's just enough. You see, it's just enough. So that means 1. You got left. Yes. That's how you combine them. So now I want you to look at the first problem. And I want you to see if you can combine what's on the left. And I'll come back and check. What are your questions?
So I put all sorts of stuff, like I copy it all to understand how these. This what is the 2 code? This 2.
You tell me. What do we have to do? What's the goal of solving for a variable? So you want to get that p by itself, right? So where do we start? And don't give me a number first. Like for any equation, we have to pick how we start, what first. So why did you start? Why did you do subtract 2? What's the variable? What's the farthest from the variable?
2.
So why did you subtract 2? No, that's right. I'm not saying change it. You're correct. So why did we do that? Got to be able to figure out what the first step is. Well, that's the next thing is subtracting. But why did you do that? Subtract 2. Just told me that you need to start farthest from the variable, right? So we're starting with 2, but what do we need to do to that 2? If we need to get rid of it, right? We want to get p by itself. So why do you subtract 2? 4. We need to get rid of the positive 2. So how do we get rid of positive 2? Because you needed to get rid of it. Remember, we do the opposite math to get rid of something. So the reason you did subtract 2 is because here we have plus 2. Right? No problem. You already told me that's where you start, farthest from the variable. So now you got to figure out, well, how do I get rid of that? That's where I start. How do I get rid of it? How do we get rid of something? What do we need to be thinking? Well, not always subtract. That word that I just said a minute ago. You do the, that'll be next. We haven't done anything on this side yet. What do I do to get rid of that? Opposite, that's the word. So if this was plus 2, that's why you did subtract 2, because you did the opposite to get rid of it. Then, now, once you do this, subtract 2, that's why you do that. So here's what you need to do, because you're going through the steps with Ms. Thompson, and she sometimes will just kind of help a lot. You need to write an explanation of what I just explained, or what you just explained to me. You need to say, I started with the 2 because it was farthest away from the variable. I subtracted because that's the opposite of the adding 2 that was in the equation. Like in your own words, you need to explain what you did, because you're never gonna get it if you're not understanding why you did it. Sometimes she will help too much, I think, and so you don't really get an understanding of what you're doing. You just kind of going through and just doing steps. She'll just say, do this, do this, do this. And I'm not saying that's what she did, but it's pretty common for teachers to do that. But you need to understand why you're doing the steps you're doing. I'll do that. There was a really weird one. Oh, that one. Try to do that one. I want to see what you did. Oh, I'm going to do one with variable on both sides. That one was confusing. Why did you do 13? Why did you do 13? Which one did you do first? Which one did you like? Asking you which one of those you thought you should do first. Did you say this one first and therefore you did that, or did you do this first? But then you have to make a decision on which one to subtract. So I'm asking you, did you start with this one and subtract it, or did you start with this one? Okay, good. I just want to make sure you did that. It's hard for me to tell. So that's not what certain. All right, go ahead. All right, let me come back and check a few more people, then I got to show you a couple of problems. Now, girl. Now over there. So I want to make sure you're practicing. These, you will have some of these on the quiz, but this is the one. Oh, where's the two? You guys need to be practicing that. So again, you staring at somebody else's paper and copying out, not going to. These. Don't, there's nothing with fractions. There's nothing with fractions on the, I need to do one with fractions and quiz, but on this particular like 3B retake, don't worry about the ones with fractions. There's only two-step equations and there's no fractions. So you have a really good opportunity today to improve your grade. And for some of you, you need that because you haven't received the passing grade yet. And retaking the first quiz, that's still going to be a hard quiz. Word problems, changing word problems into equations tends to always be hard, no matter how much we do. So take advantage of the 3B on the two-step. So there's two things you need to think of. Well, not two, there's more than two, but first thing is, what's the goal of solving for variable? So we want to get the variable by itself, which means we're always really focusing on that side where the variable is. So then we just have two numbers we gotta get it. Right? So what you have to figure out is which number do I get rid of first? Where do I start? And then from the other one farthest away, and then I do opposite math. So those are, so start with the one farthest from the variable, especially if there's no fractions, which farthest one won't be. And then just do opposite math 2 times, and you should be done. You should have a variable by itself. I want you to do as many as you need to do to feel comfortable that you're going to get a better grade on the retake. If you think you're good to go, make sure they're good to go. Okay. Keep Maddie's on around over there. Stella, let's focus. Actually, something else. So I'm putting you in charge of both of them. So try number 10. Here. So what is 0B? What does 0B mean? What does it mean first? Yes. What does 0B mean? Anything. I mean, 0 times B. Like, what is anything times 0? What is 1 times 0? What is 10 times 0? What is a billion times 0? So it doesn't matter that we don't know what B is. It's still a number, right? It's an unknown number. So what is it? What is the answer to 0 times B? Always going to be 0. It doesn't matter what B is. So you get on one side 0. And then on the other side, you get negative 10. There's no variable. Isn't that kind of weird? Do you have any idea what it means? Yes. Learned it before, but it wasn't a big, long lesson. I go. Yeah, as long as you're working. So yeah, no, not at all. Make sure you're pretty good at the equations, but I don't think you did as well as you should have on the equation quiz. There were some mistakes, I'm pretty sure that was kind of surprising. Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah, teacher. Oh, no, that's not teacher. That's not him. So we're preparing for their quiz today, which is really just the most important thing is the two-step equations.
Okay.
There will be multi-step on there, but the multi-step, I think I'm just gonna do it a practice quiz. I'm not even gonna put it in the grade book,
Okay.
just to see where everybody's at. But the two-step equations can count as their retake for their original two-step equation.
Okay.
All the people are working. All right, so if you guys are gonna sit back there, you need to be working. So my understanding is that you're gonna leave this for a while. Now, so that next one, that's not what that's important. So if he's doing this, you won't be here. So if you want to sit there on the side, you gotta be working. You will be gone in 2 minutes. I said it's out. All you gotta do, you actually did okay on the quiz. You figured it, you didn't do the steps, but I saw your logic behind it, which I was fine with.
So if you just drive through the don't worry about the one. I'll say you can do this. For mine. Number 16. And there will be traction on it, so just like. Show you. So that looks good. So now don't just say do this, this, and this. Explain why you started where you started. Explain why you did this. Yeah. Oh, you're very capable. Explain why you did what you did. And I'm gonna come ask you to do one more. You do one more. You gotta show me you know what you're doing. Wow. So I'd like you to write it under the number that you divide with. Happens sometimes if you write under this, either you'll try to combine those two, or sometimes you get it wrong. That is correct. Don't ever divide by the variable itself. Divided by 7. As long as you understand it's available. Yeah, that's good. So did you do 16? Although that was, yeah, try 16, because I think there's one person over that on the quiz. Oh, I got that's my.
All right. Okay, I'll just organize. Okay. So do another one. Is anybody else?
Oh, yeah.
Want some help?
Okay, so here's.
Yeah. Will be the chat, good? Yeah, I'm not sure.
And again, I'd rather you practice these.
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked.
Oh, okay, okay, I see what you did. You flipped it around. I'm sorry. So you flipped it around. So that would still be 45. Yeah. What do you do? So again, you went side by the age.
I like, I think about this.
Yeah.
This looks like so.
So you would have a different number here, and then you did one step.
Do you spend $5 or do you spend another $2?
I need to get you.
How many, if I put those two together, how many do I
Do you have the sheets that we, get the sheets that we tore out?
have?
Very
What's still attached to my arrow?
You get a variable still here. So what's the difference? If you already have a variable. You don't just have- Oh, so this is 0. There's no V left. No V. So 0 on one side, so variables are gone. I got a number on the left, and a number on the right, as opposed to 0. Variable. So what?
So let's go on to another one. This one's good. This should be negative 8.
Now, what if you would have got the same number this time?
Once it, remember, the whole purpose is to get.
That's very important. Now, what if we got the same number, still no variable, but the same number on both sides? Well, that is,
The opposites. What's that?
instead of no answer,
Divide. This is how division looks like. Okay.
It's got to do number. Okay, so let's look at this. Make sure you bring down the VSC8. To it. That's what so what if you would have got -10, it becomes -10.
I've got a 6
Instead of negative.
Is there anything that I can buy?
Another special, so no solution is a special kind of solution. It's another special kind of solution. I have to say like.
There's a 9. This was a 9. And I still break down my corrections. I'm not.
So what would that mean?
Break down my 17. See how I bring everything else down? Okay, so remember, we want X by itself.
How many?
So here's my X, what's attached to it? I got a 4
That's what,
and a 4 plus 5.
two numbers,
Yeah.
so the variables go away, they cancel out. You get two numbers. See, if the numbers are different,
It's the part.
then it means there's no solution. There's nothing I can do. There's no number I can get rid of that. If the answer is the same number on both sides, then any number I put on equals it. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Good. Which are good.
Let's get 9 on the other side. That cancels out. 4X. 17 minus 9.
6 minus 10 are the original problem. So we can start with the 6, make this for a start, but again, we gotta think opposite math.
No. That's okay.
Oh, now it's attached to my X.
You always wanna look on the other side. This other side doesn't matter at all.
So how do I get rid of?
You gotta think that side doesn't exist until you do something on this side. Whatever you do on this side tells you what to do on the other side. You don't need to look at that side where there's no. Keep wanting to do something over there.
Now, how do I know if that's
So what
correct?
do I do with
That's
the 6?
correct with the
Trying to
X.
get rid of it, how do I get rid of
Times
it?
2 is 8, 8
That word.
plus 6 plus 3 is 17. That's how you can do that.
Word that starts with an O.
Go this way.
So you did not do the opposite. You added 6 to positive 6. It's gotta be the opposite.
There's this, there's that. Is there anything?
No, wait a minute, why did you do -10? That's not where we start.
6
Told me where to start. Up here.
Right?
That's not the opposite.
So if I add those together,
Positive
what
6,
do I
you
get?
did +6. You gotta do the opposite. It's there.
So we're bring that at -1, because I'm not.
I gotta show you something really quick, although this doesn't really come into play. And then I gotta do one tough problem. Everybody look at number 14. Wait, was it 14, Jocelyn? What was the weird one? Other Jocelyn, I'm sorry, unfortunately, other Jocelyn. That one we were just talking about? 7? All right, look at number 7, then I guess it is. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I have it up here, I think. Totally forgot about that. Let me get to it. Yeah, here it is. I'm sorry, no, actually, this is multi-step equations. I'm gonna do 2 multi-step equations because you do have multi-step on there. But the main thing I'm concerned about is so number 7 is that one right there. I'm gonna basically do this one for you because you get a really weird answer. Even if you do it correctly, it's a really weird answer. So when I have a problem with multiple variable terms, what's the first thing I'm trying to, well, I'm always trying to get the variable alone, but what's the problem? I can't just get the variable alone because I got variables in multiple places. So what do I need to do? Angela, what do I need to do when I have those variables in multiple places? I've got to get them into one term. I can't get a variable alone if I got variables all over the place. So if they're on the same side of the equation, that's the key, same side, I just combine them. I just either add or subtract them depending on the signs. So what is negative 14v plus 14v? Again, think about debt. If you are in debt, 14, I'm going to use Ella and Maddie back there. Ella, you owe me $14. So you're in debt, $14, right? That's what in debt would be, a negative number. Maddie is super nice, and she just so happens to have $14 in her pocket. So she gives you $14. She adds, so you're in debt. That's Ella. That's Ella. She's in debt. And Maddie, who is super nice, adds to your debt. She's adding to you $14. Well, what do you got to do with that $14? You got to give it to me, right? Because you owe me the $14. Where are you at? You're at 0, right? That's the answer to this. Negative 14 plus positive 14 is 0. You're out of debt. You don't have any money, so you're not positive, but you're not negative. So that's a 0. Now the variables are gone. I don't have any variables left over, which is kind of weird. We've not ever done an equation with no variables left over. This is a very special kind of, so we didn't do anything wrong. You will potentially get this. It doesn't happen a lot, but I guarantee you the district is going to probably test you on the exceptions, not the normal stuff. Well, I'm going to tell you what this means. That is right, but we have to understand what this means as far as the solution goes. Is that true? Does negative 10 equal 0? Negative 10 is the same as 0? No, right? That's not the same number. If you ever like have a problem where you get down to just 2 numbers on each side, or 1 number on each side, 2 total, there are some weird solutions you have to be aware of. One weird solution is this situation, because this is false, right? That is not a true statement. If you have a statement that is not true, then the answer is there's no solution. There is no number I could plug in for that variable v and make the right side equal the left side. It's impossible to do. You could try any number you wanted. You can get a calculator out and try it on your own if you want later, but there's no solution that will work. Now, if my problem was this, so let's say my problem had to subtract 10 over here and all of this stuff, and then that, I would have gotten this. I would have had negative 10 equals negative 10. Is that true? Does negative 10 equal negative 10? Yeah, it's the same number, right? So they got it. If it's the same number, it equals. If you were to get that, actually, let me change and write another line. So 0 is false. If I were to get negative 10, again, the variables went away, so I'm still left with 1 number on both sides. That is true. That's true. Negative 10 equals negative 10. That is a weird solution that we call infinite solutions. What that means is that I can plug any number I want into this new equation I created, and it will always make the left side equal the right side. Doesn't matter what number I use. I use 1, 2, 0, a million, negative a million. Anything will make the left side equal the right side. So you'll get that every once in a while on the sheets that this CUDA software creates. They like testing you on those weird situations. I don't typically quiz you on that. So I'm not saying you'll never see it on one of my quizzes, but typically I don't quiz you on the exceptions. I quiz you on the more common normal situations. But I just wanted to go over it. Let me do one more real quick. That's a pretty difficult one. It's actually backwards. So Charles, real quick, let me go ahead and have the floor because we haven't done one like this yet. Some of you have. I don't think I have it. When we have variables on both sides, you need to understand that we combine the like terms much differently. When they're on the same side, oh, what do we do with the, oh man, I don't want to do this one. It's on the page. Oh, I guess I will. I cannot, so first thing you need to remember, I cannot combine 1 and 5x. They're not like terms. What do we have to be like terms? Main thing, really just one thing in this class. Have to have the same variable. I don't have a variable with the 1. Or they can be no variable at all, like no variable at all. That would also work. Like if I have just 2 numbers that are just numbers, I can combine those. But I cannot combine something with a variable and something without a variable. That's the one I told you to write down. Never, ever, 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 ever do this. As soon as you do that, I pretty much can stop grading your quiz because you don't know what you're doing. And I can just tell you you're going to need to do a retake. So don't ever combine it anywhere in the problem. A lot of kids won't do it in the beginning. They'll know not to do it there. But then somewhere later in the problem, they'll do it. You can never combine a term that has a variable and a term that doesn't have a variable. Like sometimes kids will wind up writing underneath one of these something that they can't combine. So just don't ever combine that. I can multiply because this is multiplication. If I don't have a symbol, that means multiplication. This is 5 times x. That's 5 times x over there. This is 8 times all that stuff in parentheses. So that means I'm going to write it out to the side. I like doing it as 2 separate problems. 8 times 1 is positive 8. 8 times 5x is positive 40x. Do not forget the variable. That's another huge mistake. Kids do this, they do the lines in there and they multiply, but then they forget there's an x in that second term when they get the answer. The x can't magically disappear. Right, Maddie? Now, girl. Because this is your next quiz. Well, it's actually on today, but this is like your warm-up quiz for the one that'll count next week. Probably I may change you guys to Thursday, Friday. I don't know, we'll see. We may wait till the following Monday. So now I just write those numbers over there, the answers that I got right here. That was an answer I got. That was an answer I got. I now write those to replace all of the stuff with parentheses. So 8 plus, I don't know why I wrote 8. 8 plus 40x. So I just took the 2 things that I circled in green and I'm replacing this. And then I just write the rest of the equation. I didn't do anything else with the rest of that equation. Now we get to the like terms. So do I have any like terms on the left side? I do, right? What do I have? No variable means they are like terms. Neither of those have a variable, so I can combine them. And I just add them together. There's all addition. It's not really that difficult a problem from the math standpoint. So 8 plus 5 is 13. Now, well, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the whole thing. We'll do baby steps. Now, do I have any like terms? Here's where kids get confused when you first have variables on both sides. These are technically like terms. 40x and 5x are like terms, but we cannot combine them by just adding them together. Because one's on the right side, one's on the left side. If I combine them, I would get 45x, but how would I know which side that goes on? Well, should it be on this side where I have an x, or should it be on that side? Can't just assume it goes to the left. So that's one problem. I wouldn't even know which side to put it on. Here's the real mathematical reason I can't combine them. If I were going to say, well, I'm going to combine 5x and 40x, and I add 5x over here, right? That's what we're basically doing. We're combining them. But what's my number one rule? Yeah, if I'm going to add 5x there, then I got to add another 5x over here. That doesn't do me any good. I didn't get rid of the 5x. So just remember my number one rule and it takes care of all this. Whatever I do on one side, because if I'm combining them, technically I'm saying I'm adding 5x on this side. Well, if I add 5x on that side, I got to add 5x on that side, and that doesn't do me any good. I didn't get rid of any x's anywhere. I still have x's on both sides. So what do we need to do? We are going to do the opposite. So what do we need to do? Charles, so here's what you need to think about when you just write this note. That's pretty good. Stay off your phones because you need to see this. If you have variables on both sides, you need to think about getting rid of them on one side. That's the logic that you're going to use. I need to get, if they're on both sides, I can never combine them. So I need to get rid of them on one side. I always just do the right side. Well, actually, when I'm teaching, I always do the right side. How do I get rid of that plus 5x then if I want to get rid of the x's? Yes, sir. You subtract 5x. If you have 5x's, again, think of them as a physical thing. If you have 5x's and you want them to go away, somebody needs to subtract them from you. So we're going to subtract them away. Now, whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. So that changes the math to subtraction on the other side. And mathematically, this is correct. I can do this as long as I do it on both sides. But now this goes to 0 and I get rid of it. So all I have is the 13 on the left. I'm sorry, on the right. I combine, don't write the term with the X underneath the number that doesn't have the X, because you can't combine them. So make sure you're putting like terms under like terms. You gotta put the two under each other that are the like terms. 13 is still here. What's the next thing when I combine those X's? I'm gonna call it. Ella, what is 40x subtract 5x? Well, I shouldn't call it. You do. What's 40x subtract 5x? Yeah, literally think of it as I have 40 X's. If I take 5 of them away, then I have 35 left. But don't forget the X, because they are X's. You're thinking of them as physical things, X's in your hand. Actually have a whole bunch of X's. I don't have 40 of them, but think of them as physical things. And then take 5 of them away, you'll have 35 of them left. Now what's my next step? So the 0 we don't really need, so I'm just going to kind of scratch through that. 13 plus 0 is just 13. What do I do now? Now it's a two-step equation. You should all be able to do that for the quiz today, which we need to start. Call on Tanosh for this one. Tanosh. I had you do one. I hope you were learning back there instead of just chatting, because now you're going to prove it to me. What do I do now? Where do I start? So Ryzen will not sit back there again. Can't do this one. That didn't work. Angela, you're pretty good with this. I feel comfortable with that. David, I haven't called on you. What do I do now? That? Well, what's my goal? Whenever I'm solving for a variable, what's the goal? Don't worry about looking it up. Just what's the goal? Jocelyn, say it real quick. We want to get the variable by itself, remember? Again, I'm not going to quiz you on that, but if you remember that, it helps you with the process. So if I want to get the variable by itself, I got to get rid of this 13 and that 35. So you have to know which one to start on. Which one would you start on out of those two? Why? It's just a memory thing. That's not a logic thing. It's just a memory thing. Why do we say we start? You are correct. Why do we start with that one? So we're trying to get rid of the 13 and the 35. But why did you start with the 35? It's with the variable. So how do you know not to start there? Like, what are the two things we said you could think of to determine where you start? All right, don't worry about looking it up, but you need to remember this. Now, if you can't explain it, that's fine, as long as you know it. How do we know where to start? We start the farthest from the variable, or we can say we leave the variable for last, whatever's with the variable. Either way works. So the farthest from the variable is the 13. So what do we need to do to get rid of the 13, Maddie? We do the opposite. Remember that word, opposite math. So if that's positive 13, then the number one rule is subtract on the other side. Now that gives me a weird number. Oh, no, it's a weird number. It's just a number. But you don't see 0 a lot of times on the all by itself. But that can happen. Like, you're going to sometimes get 0 as the answer on the other side. That's fine. Don't freak out. 0 is a number. Now I have 35x. I'm going to just finish this out. We got to do the quiz. 35x means I am multiplying 35 times x. I need to again do the opposite. So the opposite of multiplication is divide. I still divide the right side by the 35 just to be consistent with my rule, but 0 divided by 35 is just 0. So my final answer, which can happen, is just x is 0. The variable just equals 0. All right, everybody go back to your seat, please, so I can pass out the quiz. I want you to do the two-step equations first. The two-step equations are the ones that can count for your retake. Then come back to all the other answers. Because now I want everybody to go back to their seat. I mean, again, if I make an exception for one person, I gotta make it for everybody. Soon as you get, actually, I always hand them out first on that side, look on this side. That. No notes, no notes, no, that's why you're supposed to practice. If you practice stuff, you shouldn't be. You can put everything up, all you need is a pencil. No calculator, no papers, no nothing. Yeah, all your notes, I shouldn't even pass it out with notes out, but. Welcome. Yeah, that's good.
Names are on the. You always have one or two that come in without the names.
Different version. Yeah, as soon as you get it, go. And again, numbers 3 and 4, no matter which version you have, numbers 3 and 4 are the two-step equations. I'll just tell you which ones they are. Let's start with those.
Number 1, 200.
I mean, I want to know that you understand it, but really, number 1 and number 2 are to help you do the equation. Keep those things in mind. I mean, number 2, I did great on the other quiz. That one I did count. But I'm just worried about number 3 and 4. And then number 5 and 6 can help. I mean, they can count for you also. Even though this is a practice quiz, if you get 100 on those, I'll count that. I'm not gonna let it hurt you though, since we are still working on both. So still make sure you're trying to do number 5 and 6. Don't just leave them blank if you think you can. Because if you get 100 on it, then I'll just save that, and when we have the next quiz, probably still make you take it, but even if you don't do as well on that one, I'll count this quiz. Although I don't know, we'll see. I may make it a little harder. Actually, we'll have more time to practice. I think everybody's got one. You have until the end of class. I'll set the timer, but it's basically 22 minutes. But yeah, let's start with these two. Do those first. Spend as much time as you need on those. Don't worry about finishing, because if you only do those two, that's fine. But if you can do all the other ones, then it might help you. Oh, yeah, they used to be taped up. So.
Can I pull the last time?
Yeah, that's a
Would that work?
fantastic idea.
Okay.
I'll move that chair because I don't have anybody that sits in that chair anyway. Back there. But yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, you can see there's tape on it, which actually worked for a
Yeah.
while, but over time it gets pulled off. I was gonna have Mr. Reynolds like maybe put a screw in that would, because if I just get one of them screwed in, really, they'll stay, but that would probably work fine. Yeah. Just so that it's all. Oh, I thought you said ID, like, it's like, what do you have to say with ID? Okay, I got you. I know what you're saying. That's funny. Yeah, that's gonna be a meeting we need to prepare for. No, that's what you had said, yeah, but I'm just telling you, I've never had a phone conversation like that. Never. Or heard what she was telling me was doing. Well, that's what we're gonna have to cover, because she wants us to force it.
Okay, well,
So that's what we're
I've
gonna
already
say.
talked to our specialist and so.
Not for one week.
And I'm not saying that I tried to force it on her and she's like, no.
Yeah.
I just know she's not, I didn't know that.
Right. But here's there.
Yeah. But she says there's also supposed to be a card that she gets to keep or something that can, oh, I'm like, well, that to me doesn't sound like.
There's like a book and there's a certain language.
Which I do. I don't know what word she's talking. Yeah, that. Oh, she says, yeah, you have to make her explain the directions to you. She was,
As long as she
oh,
spits it back. Right, so organize it.
no, just was something that she said. These two things, she said something about those, but, yeah, she was. Like I said, she's very specific and detailed.
All right.
What we're supposed to be doing. FYI.
Thank you. I'll leave this here. I've got a copy
Yeah,
of this.
please.
I'll try to talk to her and see what she had last year. What are they talking about?
And I
Our
will,
big thing is we're different.
are you leaving to go to another class right now or are you hanging?
I'm hanging it.
Okay, when they're done and they leave, I'll tell you a couple things. I think it's just my opinion,
Yeah.
but.
You want me to try?
I can, I'll make it same way, I can move the cabinet. Or do you think that they'll fit in there all? Have you done enough? Oh, you will get a fraction on sixth, I believe it is. They're not all gonna come out to be nice, round, whole integer numbers. One of them will be a fraction. You don't have to convert it to a decimal or anything, just you'll have a number over a number, like, you know, what it looks like fraction. That is the final answer. 6. Hey, start with 3 and 4, so I'm hoping that doesn't mean you. 5 minutes to practice just those two-step equations, no fractions or anything. That's the coefficient, that doesn't mean that's the equal. Just because there's a variable there. Like say that's. Yeah, that's why there's. Well, again. Now it's studies. If we say this.
On the actual video. So am I not adding one? One is not adding. But all she's telling you is when you're used to adding them in front of the axis. You understand that really all I'm doing. Is three axes. And more to it. Excellent. Either way, again, whatever works for you, but I don't, as long as you understand, it doesn't mean that variable equals. That's what some kids sometimes, it's the first challenge. Looks like one version may get two fractions. But if you get a fraction on the other version. When actually, I guess, yeah, they both have two fractions, the blue and the pink. I didn't remember doing that. Maybe I was thinking of the two-step versus the multi-step. Right? Yeah, so it looks like there's fractions on both of them at the bottom. I didn't remember that. So if you got a fraction for 5 also, then that's fine. Time wise, you're still got plenty of time if you know what you're doing to do the two-step. If you're still working on those, you should really be done with those. Make sure you do the two-step. Don't leave those for last. Oh, shoot, I gotta pass out. This is just the word problems. You'll have 11 minutes. Question. Here. Yeah, I should be good. Okay. But you gotta go through the process now that we take stuff.
I had the form ready, I didn't print it out. I'll talk about it. If you need to get a form from me, I'll have it ready today. I totally forgot to print them out. I didn't. Yeah, those are yours. So that's, you need to do corrections to it. That's part of the process is correcting. Which means you need to have the correct equation on there before you can retake the quiz. So I will ask you to show me your corrections. I will ask you to do some additional problems, which are actually gonna be online. And then once you've done, and then you need to go to tutoring one time and get that signed off on. And then I'll let you do the repeat. This is why you don't want to mess up the first quiz because you're going to create a lot more work for yourself. So if you did not get a quiz back, then I don't have one for you. So either you weren't here for it, or maybe you came into class late. Like me, you weren't enrolled initially. I think everybody looks like they got one. Oh, David, here's one right now. I'm not gonna worry about passing out the one that was on equations. I'll wait and see how you do on this one. So the second quiz you had, you're already getting a retake, so there's no reason to pass them out when some of you might just do better on this one. So after this one, I see how you do, then I'll pass it out next week. Hopefully some people will get a better grade on this instead of longer. Hold on just a second.